Tim Hickerson's trial has started, and if I were a member of the Donahue family, I probably would have had to be escorted out of the courthouse by a deputy because I couldn't believe what I was watching. We had opening arguments, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about what the prosecution and defense both said, because it gives us an insight into both of their sides. And then we'll talk about the first witness and what I saw, which was, in my opinion, a huge unforced error. Let's talk about it. To start it off, both sides' opening arguments were relatively short. Prosecution took about 24 minutes. The defense was done in under 20. The prosecution started with motive, means, opportunity, and consciousness of guilt. Those are the four pillars that make up the evidence in this case. They all lead back to Tim Hickerson. So right there, that's how Matthew Sweet, the Commonwealth's attorney, started out his opening statement. So, painting a picture of where we're going with this, right? So he made a point of calling Shane Donahue Tim Hickerson's friend and vice versa. He kept on saying that over and over again. They were friends. They were friends. He also went into a little bit of backstory. Shane played high school football. He suffered an injury while playing football, got prescribed Oxy, and developed an addiction because of that. And again, I think it was really smart to just put that right out there, because this case has a lot to do with drugs. Shane was doing drugs, he was selling drugs, Tim was doing drugs and stealing drugs, as we kind of talk about later. And that's fine. And I think to put it out there, don't dance around it. You need the jury to accept that and not judge Shane for it. And honestly, don't judge anybody in this story for that. Obviously, there are other things you can judge people for, but I thought that was good. So it said that, he struggled with pain and addiction, and that led him to make poor choices. Again, keeping the judgment out of it. So Shane became known as a local small-time pill dealer, and he obtained those pills both legally and illegally. He would have what they would call doctor days, where he would go and get his legitimate prescription, and then he would also buy extra pills from other people. And he said Shane lived in the gray area of dependency and profit. Tim Hickerson, again, was supposed to be Shane's friend. Difficult to maintain friends in drug culture, though, in the drug subculture. He also said in his opening statement that Tim got Shane a gun. Now, if you've been following along, you know that guns are a big part of this as well, because shortly after Shane's disappearance, Tim Hickerson got arrested for breaking into a gun store, and that was a federal case, and he went to federal prison for that. He said, and this is a quote, when Tim Hickerson saw his opportunity, he struck like lightning. Tim owed Shane a drug debt of around $500, and he was trying to clear that debt, and he saw this opportunity to get rid of Shane and get rid of his debt. So that's the motive. And he said that on 3/20, he burglarized Shane. He stole a few pills from him. And then on 3/22, the day that Shane went missing, he, quote, cleared his drug debt forever. Burglary, murder, concealing a dead body. That's how you wipe out a drug debt. And those are the three things that Tim Hickerson is charged with. He said that theories are speculation without substance, and that when this case was reinvestigated with a new detective, everything led back to Tim Hickerson, which is why he was arrested in 2024. He says that the motive was desperation. Cash motivates a crime. Mike Colgan hired Shane Donahue to remove some ceiling tiles from an airplane hangar, and he was paid over $3,000. Shane had cash at the time of his disappearance, or he likely had cash at the time of his disappearance. Then he talked about Daniel Gould, who was a friend of Shane's and an acquaintance of Tim's. He was with Shane on the morning of his disappearance. He gave Shane a ride. They went to Walmart, Target, Shane's house. Tim came over to Shane's house, and Daniel felt that something wasn't right. He got a bad vibe, so he took off. He also mentioned Emily Kinnaman, who has been a source of much consternation. And he said that she tried to steer Shane and Tim away from each other, and she saw Tim the day before his disappearance, and that they had plans to get more pills the day after his disappearance on the 23rd. Then the 24th is when he was reported missing. And Detective Wing, who was the lead detective on the case back in 2010, asked Tim, "Where's Shane?" And Tim just said, "I don't know. Nothing more, no concern, curiosity, or cooperation." And Mr. Sweet contended that this empty denial was consciousness of guilt. Where's Shane? Only one person in this courtroom can answer that, and that would be Tim. Shane, this was not an accident. He's not a runaway. Tim took what he wanted from Shane. He took his pills and he took his life. Overall, it was a pretty good opening. It kind of got the point across of what they were trying to go for. I think he could have hit a few points harder, but it was decent. The defense's statement really focused on the burden of proof. He said that Tim is a husband, a son, and a friend, and he is presumed innocent, and he is innocent. He said that the evidence will show that the prosecution cannot meet the burden of proof because you can't use speculation and you can't use conjecture. He then went on to this other thing, and it was Mike Eisenstein, the co-counsel who did this. He went into this whole thing about the difference in the burden of proof between civil and criminal trials that I think he went a little too far into the weeds on. But he said, evidence will not answer what happened to Shane after Tim dropped him off at home. No direct evidence of murder, manner of death, or a weapon. Those are fatal to the Commonwealth's case. No direct, real evidence that Shane is dead or that a murder even occurred. Then he said that Shane and Tim were friends, but that Shane was very secretive and he was taking more drugs than what Sweet alluded to in his opener. He also said that Shane and Tim lived less than a mile apart. So if their phones were bouncing off the same tower, that just makes geographical sense and doesn't actually mean that Tim did anything nefarious. He also said that at that Walmart trip that the prosecution brought up, Shane Donahue bought another phone. And that phone has never been found. And it doesn't seem as though anybody even knows what phone number would have been associated with that phone. So I think he was trying to lay the groundwork of Shane having another phone out there. So there could be other relevant phone records that, won't be told about in court. Then he started attacking memories. So he said that, does a person's memory get better after 15 years? Because his point has been the witnesses in this case simply can't remember enough to actually be helpful. And he said that in 2014, Prince William Police told Northern Virginia Magazine that Shane was just poof gone and that nothing has changed since then. So yeah, he's already bringing up different avenues of reasonable doubt. And he said, we're going to talk about what was found in Shane's house versus what was not, and that there are inconsistencies. Now, unfortunately, this video got too long, so I'm going to talk about the first witness in the next video.